Thank you all for joining us here at Let's Go Warriors. We have a very special vidcast, as always, but this one's extra special because when you can do it with your boys, the people you've been in the trenches with, it's always sweeter. I'm your host, Daniel Hardy. I have my good friend, WWW, Triple D. How are you doing, man?
Good day today, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Glad you're here, man. Glad you're here. We have a guy who actually started with us at Gold State of Mind back in our old Fox days. His name is Patrick Murray. He is the genius who breaks down all the NBA capology over there for Forbes. So if he's breaking down the money over there, you know my man Patrick is serious. Patrick, how you doing, bro?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. Quite an introduction. I'll try and live up to it.
Oh, yeah, you owe me some money after that, Pat. You owe me a little bit of change. Okay, so as it stands right now, the Golden State Warriors are not competing for the 2020 NBA championship. I know, shock. Last 5 years it was happening. This year, not so much. But they are looking towards the future to rebuild. Patrick, we have you on here specifically so you can help Dub Nation figure out how the money is going to work going forward. We got draft pick number 2, and we've got some, trade exception, a couple things here we can work in. What do you see and what do you not see coming forth for the Warriors?
So, yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is from the bubble, my kind of top takeaway from the bubble is that the Warriors, if they do the right things around their court, should absolutely be back in contention next year. They've got a few tools they can use. They've got, as you say, the number 2 pick in the draft. They've got a $17.2 million traded player exception, which they got for Andre Iguodala when they traded his contract away. And the way that works is you can bring in a player who's worth that amount of money. You can't aggregate it with any other, as the exception, you can't aggregate it with any other salary. They've also should have at their disposal the taxpayer mid-level exception, which we don't know when salary cap's going to be set yet for next season. But if it's at similar levels to this season, it would be around $5.7 million. The big question mark is what is the salary cap, what is the league finances going to look like next year? Because about 40% of the league's income, of team revenues, come from fans being in arenas. And we don't know at this point when the season's going to start, how much the season will have fans in the arenas. So there's kind of negotiations they've danced around it between the NBA and the Players Association, but they'll probably start in earnest after the finals to set, what essentially, how they're going to get around this problem of, even if they get some fans in arenas next year, it's going to be much lower in terms of the league revenues. And it's worth saying for the Warriors, about 80% of their revenues come from the Chase Center.
I think one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about specifically, Patrick, was what type of player do you think we can get for the MLE? A lot of people are seeing that as a tool that we can use to fix a significant gap in a roster that was full of gaps. And, just like you were saying about the Lakers, some top end is nice, but if your supporting cast is so flawed that they can't stay on the court, it's a real problem. So, some of our previous MLEs have had mixed returns, DeMarcus Cousins and Nick Young.
Swaggy P.
But so I want to just talk to you, Patrick, a little bit about who you think the Warriors should realistically be looking at for those MLE options.
So the first question is, are they going to use it? So the Warriors have got as well as 80% of their revenues coming from Chase Center and not knowing whether fans are going to come in or not, they've got $157 million, just over that, on the payroll already, once you count the second pick, which is $25 million over the tax threshold. If they were to use both the traded player exception and the MLE, the taxpayer MLE, that put them $45 million over the luxury tax threshold. And that will give you a salary of $177.5 million, somewhere around that, and a tax bill of $163.5 million. So overall, they're over $340 million if they use both those tools. So there's a genuine question, right? Are they going to use these tools? But I think that the mid-level exception, everyone loves the idea, or probably by the time this goes out, loved the idea of Marc Gasol, but it looks like he's maybe going back to Europe. And beyond that, that taxpayer middle-level exception, if you don't use it, you save $34 million in tax and salary. It's quite a lot of money. So if you're going to spend, $5-6 million on a player, are they worth the extra 30 million? It's interesting to see some of the trades that get thrown out there. I think there are players they can get, but a traded player exception typically gets you kind of
bad.
Like an overpaid veteran who, maybe the team is going in the other direction and is trying to get younger and they want to get off some money and, they're happy to give that player up. So on their own, they're kind of, Rudy Gay keeps coming up as a name. You can see that, like, that's exactly that situation, right? He's an aging veteran on a San Antonio team that is starting to go towards the other end. San Antonio might, for a second-round pick or something, a couple of second-round picks, might as well get off that money. For the Warriors, he plays a position that could give them, could help them. He's a veteran. He's got the length they like. They've always liked him, going back to when they thought Andre Iguodala might not re-sign. So, that's kind of the kind of vanilla use of it. The interesting thing is whether either because other teams are in financial salary cap hell, basically, Philadelphia would be one. Josh Richardson would be the name you could kind of slot into that section there, or combined with a draft pick, you could get someone more interesting.
Who is your pie in the sky hope that the Warriors come up with that combination of draft pick and that exception?
So, I mean, my dream scenario for the Warriors off season is Marcus Smart, and I think it's a bit of a long shot post bubble because I think he was fantastic. The interesting question that Boston have got is Jason Tatum becomes eligible for an extension this off season. Doesn't kick into 2021, but they're going to get quite expensive. Do they want to get off that money now and get potentially a James Wiseman? It's maybe a step back because Marcus Smart's so important to that team, but the core is young enough that actually Wiseman would give them that center that, they chased Anthony Davis really hard before he went to LA. So, that could be an interesting prospect for them. For the Warriors, you wouldn't necessarily just want to trade away a second pick, even in this draft, for a veteran like that. But the Celtics do have the 14th pick. So you could see a deal centered around the number 2 pick for Smart and 14. And then from the Warriors' perspective, you can get someone like Sadiq Bey out of Villanova with that pick, who's a 3-and-D wing, great size, 6'8", guards all positions, shoots 45% from 3. And then, around Steph, Klay, Draymond, Wiggins, Looney, you've also then got Smart and Bey, 2 really good 3-and-D defenders, and Eric Pascal as well. And that is the core of a really strong defensive team that also has got enough versatility offensively in terms of you've got Steph and Klay, obviously, but then you've also got tertiary scorers in Wiggins and in potentially Pascal, who I think is a pretty good player, actually. That team feels to me like it's pretty versatile. You can defend, you can score. You've got some great 3-and-D guys there. That would probably be my dream scenario with the TPE and the pick. To be honest, I don't see that many great options beyond that in terms of trading down players that other teams have that are going to come in and be that wing stopper they really need. So if you think about what they might face next year in the playoffs, let's say they get the 3 seed or something for argument's sake. Luka Doncic and the Mavs get the 6th seed. That's your first round matchup. One of the LA teams gets the 2 seed. That's your second round matchup, either LeBron or Kawhi. The other LA team in the West Finals, and then in the finals you've got Giannis and you've got Kevin Durant. So everyone's got very excited about these finals, saying, "Oh, everyone's." You
don't have Giannis in the finals, bro. Let's stop playing. Let's stop crowning Giannis. Take the crown off his head. He's not going.
All right. Well, let's say Kevin Durant then, right?
Okay.
So either way, you've got a series of all of the best wings in the NBA in the league, one after another. Probably won't happen exactly like that, but that's you've got to be able to match up with that. And Wiggins alone isn't going to be enough. So you've got to get someone on the wing who can defend as well. And I think so. For me, Marcus Smart, we've seen him lock up some of the biggest names, and feels like of the people who might be gettable, and it is a might, but he feels like probably the best of those options, I think.
Like a lot of people in Dub Nation are saying, we got to get a big no matter what, because they're looking at that Lakers team and, they're seeing Anthony Davis and LeBron just being too big. So I feel like you're not as worried about the size thing. Is that true?
I think Anthony Davis is a wonderful player. I think he is proving how great he is in this playoffs. I've also seen Draymond Green lock him up in 2 different playoff series.
Oh,
so and Dwight Howard, all right, great rejuvenation. Now, why has he been out of the league or kind of on the periphery of the league for the last few years? Because the Warriors ran big guys like him off the floor. So, what's going on in the bubble is not representative of what a series against the Golden State Warriors is. Now, there are people out there who say, well, Draymond Green's fallen off and, he's not going to be the player he is. But people said that in the 2017-18 season, and he was fantastic in the playoffs. People said that in the 18-19 season, he was fantastic in the playoffs. And yeah, last season he dialed it back, obviously. But, there were 2 games he cared about. One was the Houston Rockets game on Christmas Day, and he kicked their behinds. And then the other was a Cleveland Cavaliers game where the Cleveland fans had an interesting approach in the warm-up. Kind of ignited the beast, and there was Draymond. So, even if he's not, going full belt in the regular season, when it gets to the playoffs, I reckon he's got at least 2 or 3 more playoff runs left in him. If you look at kind of historic comps as well for the undersized big man type player.
Believe in Draymond Green. You heard it first from Patrick Murray.
Yeah, I'm not giving. Yeah, no way I'm giving up on Draymond at this point.
Nice. But Marcus Smart is only 6'3". So one of the things that, again, there's a lot of different versions of size, and he can certainly cover up to probably Klay Thompson-sized guys. But the Warriors do have a roster need. Right, Marquise Chris is their starter, and he's 6'10". They just don't have that big guy. So do you think that Wiseman, even without the film on him, maybe the Warriors do see that as a preferred need to fill? So,
I think that you can't get Wiseman and Smart, as it were. You've got to pick what's your...
That's what I'm asking. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the Warriors would value that over getting big with Wiseman.
So I think, to be honest, draft, this particularly counts. But, with the TPE as well, to a certain extent, when you've got these tools and you've got kind of a roster that you're still trying to build, you just got to get the best players you can. And for me, I think Smart is, going to be better in the next few seasons than anyone in this draft. And he can certainly, I know there's a lot, I've heard the Giannis slander. I'm not quite there, I have to say. I'm seeing him.
You're not quite where.
I think Giannis is a fantastic player, and I think he's going to figure it out.
Me too.
Yeah, I think he's going to figure it out. But
a jump shot at some point.
Yeah, right. So, but my point is that Marcus Smart has found a way to kind of lock him up. Marcus Smart has battled Kawhi Leonard pretty effectively as well. So he can guard high, bigger than his position. He's kind of like the guard Draymond Green. And I think in the big category, I just think the speed at which the Warriors can play with Draymond at the centre is really important. I think you're right, though. There is a need for another big. Now, the biggest thing that's probably come out of the double that they're calling it, Dub's bubble, is that I can't even say it. But it's that Kevon Looney has that. A lot of it is people haven't really been allowed in, but it does look like Kevon Looney is healthy, and that I think is a big thing. Now he's only ever going to be, probably given the health issues he's had, like a 20-25 minute player. So you're still going to be looking to, if you don't go big in the draft, or you're still looking at a kind of platoon at centre. But I think given the way the NBA is, I do think that the bubble is slightly masked the kind of revolution that's happened over the last 5 years. And the Warriors have always maintained the flexibility to play big and small.
Right.
So I do think they'll need to get a big body. in there. But like, if you're telling me that, you know, in a series against the Denver Nuggets, for example, Jokic, who was fantastic, and I've, you know, always loved for the tubby Euros, definitely. But like, you won't, they'll just run him off the floor, you know. So now, if you're in the draft, if you can't execute that pick and you're in the draft, you go for best player available. And I'm very interested in having a conversation about what best player available means in the context of the draft.
Well, I think it's interesting you say that, because what you're saying is you have a strategy mold here that you're saying the Warriors have already proven the blueprint for it. In fact, it's a blueprint that, when the people are healthy, hasn't been proven to be defeated. So I hear what you're saying. Why would we say pick the best player for a scheme that doesn't fit that earth-shattering strategy? I hear you 1,000% there, and I really haven't thought about that way, just because I remember over the years we always had a JaVale or a Bogut or David West, where you always had that big guy. But then in crunch time, can't forget Zaza. Alchemy would kill me if I didn't bring Zaza up. The beast. But when the game was at, you know, the bounce of the game was there, we always went to that death lineup where it was like, we're going small and just blowing you off the court. So obviously you can't run that for 82 games plus playoffs. But when the Warriors were at their crunch time, that's what they went small. So I guess my question is, do you make the best small team you can? Or, you know, it's kind of like D'Antoni Rocket style, or do you say you got to have a big in there? You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to juggle that. Yeah,
I mean, like Don Nelson did it before D'Antoni did it with the Phoenix Suns, and the Warriors did it before the Rockets tried to do it. So, and the difference, I mean, I'll go back to this, but the difference between like what the Rockets tried to do and what the Warriors did, and what in fact every team that tried to go small before, and what the Warriors managed to do in terms of winning, was Draymond Green, because he allows you to battle those bigger guys and go small and go fast, which is, people don't understand how rare and how special a player he is. And they look at kind of the pedestrian numbers last year and kind of forget about it. But having said that, I think, you know, the strategy should be to, you know, if you can build a team that is kind of that smaller team with Marcus Smart or whoever. I mean, I don't really see who the other forever is, who might be available at this point. You know, you go that way. But if you can't, if that isn't available, if Boston are like, no, you know, why would we trade this guy? He's an integral part of our team. We're not that worried about the salary cap issues. And you know what, we don't think why, you know, for whatever reason, we're not that kind of interested in Wiseman. You do have to then, I think you're just looking at getting the best talent rather than the best fit in the draft in particular. I think it's okay when you're lower down to kind of go for the best fit. But if you're at number 2, that's where I think teams tend to go wrong and tend to end up with a guy a few years later. They think, oh, you know, we've missed out on this guy, or you know. So I think they do have to go, if they're staying at 2, if they're not trading down, I think they do have to go with the best talent, the best player available.
And who would that be? Who would that be, Pat?
Yeah, so I've got a hot take, or maybe a cold take. I don't know.
This is probably your hottest take.
Yeah. So I think Obi Toppin is the best player available right now in this draft. And then the question is, who is the best player in 3 years' time? Who is the best player in 5 years' time? What degree of likelihood are those other prospects of reaching it against what degree of likelihood of like a Toppin improving? And how much are you willing to bet the farm on an uncertain prospect in 5 years' time, so you can have a team that might be like the 6th seed in the West against, you've got a top 10 player of all time in Stephen Curry right now, right in a window. That, like, there's only at best 9 players better in NBA history to me. You don't get those guys very often. You don't get windows very often. So, like, it doesn't mean you should, like, punt everything at all, but it's a balance of the different risks and a balance of those different aspects in the decision-making process. And within it, you've also got to remember, you've got Minnesota's top 3 protected pick next year's draft, and a pick in the 5 to 10 range there is probably going to net you a better player than a pick at number 2 in this draft. Now, having said that, I think there's a lot of good NBA players in this draft, but it's not the surefire superstar draft. But, you know, very happy to dig all the way into that take because I know it's a little off the wall.
Dale, do you want to talk about that? Because I do have a few questions.
Oh, go ahead, Dubs. Go ahead.
Okay, so I did read your article, and I was fairly convinced. But I think one of the problems with watching a bunch of film on these guys is that did you watch that much film on all of the other lottery pick guys?
I mean, you can't watch that much film on James Wiseman.
Right, who has only played 69 minutes against top flight competition in his college career.
Well,
that is a very small.
Because the 2 games, he played 3 games, right? And the first 2 games were not talent. Like he played
exactly. He played like.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, he played half against Oregon because he got foul trouble in the first half. He was good. I'm not denying that. So I think the issue. So this is quite an interesting. There's almost a kind of philosophical element to this. So I mean, I watched a lot of. There's been a lot of time in lockdown, and there's only so many times you can rewatch Warriors games or The Last Dance or whatever else you've kind of your jam has been. At some point, you've got to delve into kind of college basketball, which I must admit I've never, I've watched on and off. I've watched college basketball, but not, never been a college guy as much as the NBA. But I've watched a lot this summer. I would say the first thing I would say about Obi Toppin is the Dayton Flyers played like quite an NBA style offense, certainly. So their coach was at the Thunder, was assistant coach there. So you got to see him do a lot of stuff he would do in the NBA. And he was really, really good. He's a really good basketball player. He can shoot. He's thunderous dunks. He can, he's always moving off the ball. He was dominant without kind of dominating the ball, if you see what I mean. So it was a lot of kind of pick and roll, pick and pop, transition, lob dunks, baseline cut, so you can dribble handoffs. You can see him in a Warriors offensive system just destroying people, and he had that gravity effect. So I think that's in terms of the offensive skill set, it's so versatile and it's already elite, certainly at college level. But there are elements you would want to polish up for the NBA. I think
But the question, right, is can he survive in a Warriors defensive system?
Right. So the issue that is absolutely the question. So there are 2 questions with Toppin. One is the age, and one is the defense. And I think I had a bit of a turnaround on Obi Toppin because when I first kind of watched him play, the defense kind of worried me quite a lot. And I looked at other prospects and I thought, well, probably they're going to be. Maybe you'll be better off, and certainly in terms of fits, if you're lower down at 4 or 5, like Denny Avdia, Tyrese Halliburton, they're good fits. I don't think they've got potentially the upside. The question is, can Toppin improve defensively to a point where you can keep him on the floor in a playoff series? Because what he's going to give you on offense is so valuable that you do want to be able to do that. And I think. When I really delved into the tape and I watched like countless Dayton Flyers games, and it was actually, more fun watching Dayton Flyers going 29-2, playing an NBA style, motion offense, spread offense than perhaps it was watching the Warriors, dare I say, for stretches.
How dare you?
Yeah, stretches of last season. But anyway, sorry, I admitted my infidelity there. But yeah, so, what are his issues? So there's a couple of things that people come up. One is that he's, not big enough to guard true NBA 5s. And the second is the kind of lateral quickness to guard 4s, which when I put it like that, sounds pretty scary, right? I think when you kind of dive into the tape, there's a lot of different things that are going on. He's got vertical athleticism. He's got pretty good length. We'll have to see actually when measurements come out how long that is. It's reported 7'2" in some places. I've seen it 6'11" others, but either way it's kind of plus size wingspan, and when he kind of unfurls, he gets he can get some he's pretty effective shot blocker off kind of weak side shot blocker. He's never quite going to have the base, I think, to a real a Jokic or something like that. But how many there are those guys out there, Jokic, Embiid, and that he's going to probably struggle with that a bit, and that's where you might need another option, as the Warriors have always had, kind of, the Zaza option that you mentioned. And then, the perimeter, he's kind of got, like, people have talked about his kind of hip flexibility as a thing. Like, he doesn't turn that well in space. And I think, that is an issue. And you can't, the one thing I would say about that is the interesting thing about Obi Toppin, and this plays into the age discussion as well, is his route is quite different. So he came out of high school, didn't have any offers, Division 1 offers, went to a year prep school, and then had a load of Division 1 offers. And then he was a redshirt freshman. And, so he's kind of, and then, put his name in the draft last year, came in like second round. So he came back out. And then he's the best player in college basketball. So he's had these kind of rapid improvements over his career, but he's also, with the greatest respect to Dayton, who've done a fantastic job there, he's not been in like a really, like in an environment where you've got the kind of infrastructure that an NBA team does to help improve kind of flexibility, mobility, agility, that kind of thing. And, with that kind of training, you can get some way of the way there. Now, I'm not going to bet the whole farm on him suddenly turning into a massively switchable defender, but you can do some stuff there. And then the question is, what else is it? And it's kind of, you get him in with Ron Adams and Jaron Collins, and it's like you're getting in the right stance, you're getting the footwork right, you're getting your positioning right. Like any rookie who comes in, including James Wiseman, frankly, in the first year is going to be a bad defender. That always happens with rookies. The question is, how quickly can they improve? And I think I'm willing to bet on the track record of improvement, the fact that he'll be in a completely different environment, and then you can play him alongside. It's not like, some of these other guys that are perhaps more interesting defensively. You can't play them alongside Draymond Green because they can't stretch the floor. You can't play them alongside Kevin Looney because they can't stretch the floor. Whereas Toppin gives you so much offensive gravity that you can't leave him. So that means that you're able to play a kind of a different lineup, and then you've got the other guys to kind of work on the defense as well. It's not ideal. It's I'll really say it's not an ideal fit, but the issue is who else might be, and what are they actually going to be in the first couple of years? First, say, like 3 years, for example. So going back to the question out of who's the best player this year, who's the best 3 years, 5 years. So let's say you've got a 3-year window of prime Steph Curry, Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. Who's actually going to be better? And I think when you look at those top picks, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards and James Wiseman, they're all so far away and they've got so much work to do to get there. I'm not convinced that they're going to help you as much as Toppin does on the floor now, even in a couple of years' time. That, like Wiseman's offensive game is never going to be, well, I don't want to say never, you never say never with, when you're talking about 18 and 19-year-old kids, but, he doesn't project as the kind of versatile offensive weapon that Toppin is. And I think, when you're that high up, you've got to go with the player who's going to be the best player. And then, 5 years' time, okay, let me ask you this question, and this is a very difficult question to ask to Warriors fans, but who would you rather have tried to build a team around out of the Lob City Clippers? DeAndre Jordan or Blake Griffin?
Patrick, gross.
Because right. But if they both hit their ceilings, like Griffin has got, there are differences between Toppin and Griffin, but like it's that kind of athletic, explosive,
I see.
Four. And with Wiseman, like, he might have the jumper, he might not. But he's going to be, with that size, he's going to be lob threat, rim protector, and it is a bit of a philosophical question.
But how long Warriors fans, before we became the dynasty, coveted DeAndre Jordan. They were saying, we can just get DeAndre Jordan on this team. Oh my gosh, what we're going to do. I remember the Warriors, did they offer him some money, right? The Warriors offered him a sheet, right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you cut. Wasn't that when you waived Jeremy Lin and then he went on to that insanity run to create the cap space for Jordan? I might be misremembering.
Had their eye on him for a while. So I think there is that kind of mindset where the idea of just having some height and athleticism on the Warriors. We've for so many years been like, ever since basically Chris Webber left, it's been like, we need a big guy who can dunk on people and block shots. And so I think in our minds that we've always had that. So when you think about this draft, I hear what you're saying. That's a great way to pose it, because yeah, I would love a more versatile option so that, you know, we get a little bit more of that Kevin Durant-ness, which is you never know who's going to score because everybody can really score, as opposed to how it was back in the day where it was like, Steph and Klay, you got to do it. Everybody else said hella screens. You know what I mean? So I can see that kind of attitude. But at the same time, because we do already have Wiggins, who is going to be a guy who's going to get touches, and we've seen he can pretty much score 20 in his sleep. We've seen it over and over again. I'm wondering, do we go ahead and say we need the defense to be locked down? I guess that's the question.
I mean, yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, it's not just the DeAndre Jordan question, you know, one of the trades that turned the Warriors around. I mean, Iguodala was obviously the kind of the headline move, but that Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut was massive, right? And it signaled something about the Warriors that, you know, they were giving up a great fan favorite player who could get you 20, 25 on a night, might give up 30 on a night. Sorry.
Was that Ekpe Udo you're referring to, the fan favorite?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know your guy. Yeah, I thought about wearing a suit for this podcast, but decided against it. So Andrew Bogut, obviously defense first. He had the passing and things like that. I think the thing about Wiseman that would be really interesting. I mean, if they do take him, there's a logic to it. There's definitely a logic to it, right? That he can be that rim runner, lob threat, block shots for the first couple of years, and then you're hoping that the skill set develops to where he can be a player later on. But I suppose I've got a couple of questions about Wiseman, really. One is, it's a $40 million contract, and the guy's played half a game against top flight opposition in college. Are the Warriors going to do that? They might do. You know, they do like they're going for the big home run, but that's there's a lot of projection that goes on with Wiseman.
Right.
And then the second thing is, like, this isn't about, you know, as I say, you've got to go best player available. So you don't want to make your pick on the fit. But when it gets down to it, what they're going to do in the playoffs, they're going to run out Draymond Green at 5. So, you know, like, I think the really interesting one, where I think there is more of a dilemma for the Warriors, if Anthony Edwards is there. Because Anthony Edwards, 6'5", great wingspan, amazing NBA explosiveness, potential scoring ability. You can see the Warriors looking at that, thinking we can craft a wing, an NBA wing out of that. But man, like you said about Wiggins, right? Anthony Edwards, there's definite Wiggins 2.0 vibe. And yeah, Wiggins can get you 20 points, but what's the efficiency? Who's he taking shots away from? Like Toppin shooting, 63% from the field and 39% from 3? That's efficient, you know. Wiggins is, I think he'll be better with the Warriors, but I got to see it. And I got to see it for more than 12 games because, to be honest, he had stretches in Minnesota where he was good. And Anthony Edwards, same kind of guy. And the question is, I suppose, you get the guard version of Wiggins, but you get him 5 years earlier, so you don't have the kind of the culture of Minnesota and the miscasting as the lead guy, and you can bring him along slowly. And you're hoping that your culture and, you know, the reinforcement of that culture with guys like Sean Livingston and Leandro Barbosa coming back, which I think is a kind of a huge move for them, actually. You're hoping maybe that you could create a structure around him where you do that. But Steve Kerr's going to break a lot of clipboards if that happens. He might not get on the floor very much either, because he's not much of an interest in playing defense, even though he's got these great defensive tools, and his shot selection is, you know, not good. So yeah, look, there are these high upside guys here that in 5 years' time might be a better player than Toppin. But I would say, you know, Toppin's old, so you compare to these guys, so he's closer to his ceiling, but he's already a really good basketball player, a really smart basketball player. And that
Are you saying this is kind of like the Pistons possibly choosing, you know, Darko over Melo? Is this what's happening here? What you're saying with the Wiseman Toppin comparison?
Well, you know, you don't know, right? So they took Darko on the basis of so the legend goes anyway, on the basis of a crazy workout where he looked amazing, and then you know, so one of the things you get from playing a full season and seeing a player play a full season and play winning basketball for a full season, dominant winning basketball on a winning team. You know, if it was that much of a liability defensively, they wouldn't have gone 29-2. And I do think this is Toppin, and I do think if there'd been a tournament, an NCAA tournament, they would have made a deep run, and the conversation might be quite different around him. But you know, one of the things you do get is you see how they handle pressure. You see how they actually look in a game, and like you can look great in workouts. You can look, but when the pressure's on and you've got a split second to make decisions, and you know, those are the things where that's what separates. So I'm not saying for a second that James Wiseman is kind of Damian Jones. But like,
sounds like you were saying. It very sounds like you're saying he's Damian Jones.
No, I'm not. No, I think he's going to be. I do think he'll be a good NBA player, probably. I just don't know, like whether it'll be DeAndre Jordan or Chris Bosh, and that matters quite a lot, right?
Patrick, our good friend, it's always good to see you, man. Thank you for joining us for the pod. Do you have anything for Dub Nation to steal their nerves as we head into this uncertain but very bright future?
Keep the faith, I'd say. I mean, you know, if they use the tools they've got at their disposal, the Warriors should be really good next year. And, you know, it'll be fun. I think, you know, we've all forgotten it's been 18 months since we've seen Steph, Klay and Dre on the court together. However that turns out, it's going to be a ride. Hell of a ride.
All right, folks, you heard it from Patrick Murray. And as always, let's go Warriors.